We are the emotionally exhausted and we're ready to hit pause button and find balance. You with me? If so, join us on the Scenic Road podcast as Virginie Ferguson discusses the importance of mental and emotional resilience, what Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist has anything to do with it, and how yoga helped her reclaim calm and purpose. Hi, and welcome to the Scenic Route podcast, where we believe in embracing life's journey with purpose, curiosity, and a bit of potty humor. I'm one cool mom, and I'm always looking out for that perfect slice of gluten-free rhubarb pie. Every week, I get the joy of sitting down with dreamers and doers who dare to take the road less traveled in pursuit of their own magic. Together, we dive into the inspiring stories of soulful entrepreneurs and visionary leaders who boldly share their beliefs, lessons, and fuck-ups. Excited? So am I. You're exactly where you're meant to be. And now, let's take this conversation off the beaten track. Virginie Ferguson is the director of Clan Wellness and is a mental and emotional resilience coach, yoga teacher, science lover, and mom of two. She uses techniques that stem from yoga, breathwork, meditation, and heart coherence, all backed by evidence-based science. When working with individuals, she helps the overwhelmed and anxious reduce stress and anxiety so they can access emotional and mental resilience to be their best selves with those they love and advance their career. In the workplace, she assists employees and leaders in developing resilience to foster happy, engaged, and successful teams and to attract and retain the best talent. Virginie, how are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I am good. For people who don't know you, can you please briefly walk us through your story, like how you started, like how you got from France to Scotland, like what were your pivotal crossroads and the big moments that led you to where you today?
Yeah, yeah. So, and then it's funny because I shared a piece of that last week on my social media, and one of these bits of story where people go, "Oh wow, I never knew this. It's so inspiring, and I'm going to buy this book as well." And one of the things that you just never really think of, or like as an introvert, you'll just want to keep for yourself, or you think people are going to find it boring. Who would want to know that? But I shared a picture of me in a book. In fact, I've got it here. Oh, you're not going to see it. It's blurred.
Yeah, it's
Sorry. So
blurred.
it's yeah. So The Alchemist, by Paulo Coelho.
Yeah,
And
love it.
yeah, it's just amazing book. And the picture I shared of this book that I've got here is the very copy that I first bought. I've bought many copies since, but this is the only one I've got left because I keep giving them away. But this is the French version of it, and this is the very one that I bought in that train station once when I was going to Paris, when I was working in Paris. And time of my life, I was 20 years old, hated the job I was doing, didn't know what I was wanted to do. I wasn't in the right place in my personal life. And then I read this book, and then at the end of it, I just, you know, this book really changed my life because I ended up buying a one-way ticket plane to Guernsey, tiny island in the Channel Islands. And I just thought, I'll figure out what I want to do, what direction I'm going to take into my life. I'm just going to improve my English. That's something that's always good to have.
That's always a smart thing to do.
That's
like
it.
smart justification. Like I'll just improve my English.
Yeah, yeah. I'll just go and learn it and properly speak it. People give me a job for that. And then, so I ended up going there on this tiny island, and I thought, right, I'll stay there for a few months. I'll go back to France after the summer or something, and then figure it all out. But I ended up never came back. So it's like 22 years that I've left France, and then I've never came back to live there. So I stayed on the island for 4 and a bit years, met my husband, who's Scottish, hence why we're here now, in Scotland, in the west of Scotland, a beautiful part of the world. Very, very wet, but that's why it's so beautiful.
Yes, there you
And
cannot have the green without the rain.
exactly. So yeah, I got there and then done different jobs and ended up working for a life science company where, science and life science and biology has always been something that I've always loved, and it's kind of really been a huge interest to me. And again, just working a few jobs there, but at that point we had added two bambinos to our family. And then I got to a point where I was working as a project manager with biopharmaceutical companies, mostly vaccine producers all over Europe. So I was a mom of two, working full time, traveling all over Europe, and I was trying to balance it all. And I was just stressed out, completely stressed out, overwhelmed.
I was like saying, like, how did that go for you?
I was just, yeah, not a good place. Like always constantly rushing, no time for myself. Fitness had gone out the window. I was always someone who always enjoyed, like running and going to the gym and doing this and that, and just I had no time for me. And this is when I eventually thought, right, I need to do something. I need to find a way to deal with this, and just to reconnect and just to look after myself. And so I tried yoga. I tried a yoga class, and I thought, yoga was always something that I always, like in my 20s, I always used to think, why would you want to do that? Like just go and run and lift
I
weights.
know the feeling. I know the feeling. I'm like, why?
What's the purpose of it? Why do you want to stick your bum up in the air and then, why? You look ridiculous, sort of thing. So I just never saw the point at all. But then I got to the point I was like, do you know what? I need to do something. Let's try this and
Let's
see.
try something different, right?
That's
like,
it.
I mean, yeah.
And then I just, I discovered how much it was impacting me, like mentally. It was like the mental and emotional side of things. How much more calm I was. I'm much more in control, and the 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 um the clearer mind. It wasn't. I used to. So what I was started doing at that point was like getting up earlier, like early in the morning, before everybody woke up, before the kids were up, and just take that half an hour, 45 minutes to myself and practice in my living room, do my breathing, do a wee bit of meditation in the end. And then what I found is that was just so much calmer. It wasn't that big rush, rush, rush. Right, let's get the kids out the door. Hurry up.
Yeah, and I mean the rush is insane. Like
That's it. Drop them in nursery, just try to get to work for 8:39, and then just get straight into it. And you're like, what am I supposed to be doing? What am I doing today? And then you have breakfast. And so I was just getting there, and I was just like, okay, much more calm now. I know one, two, let's do this. So, and obviously with this, just kind of this scientific background, and I love to understand how things work and why things happen a certain way, and I started digging and looking at the nervous system, try to understand why I was doing this, why I was feeling that way, why it had such an impact. And so the more I was reading and studying and discovering about it, the more I thought I need to share this with others, And it came to a point where I was almost, all I was thinking about, will just be at work and doing my thing, and then I'll just go to the loo, and then my mind will just go somewhere else. I'll be like thinking about the next yoga practice, and I was even kind of started to imagine, how I would teach it, how I would speak. And so I thought, well, there's always this thing where the mind is like, what you're talking about, you've got a great job, great career prospect. This is a great company to work for. You've got
the very logical side, and not to dismiss it, right? It's a fair point, right? Like
it is,
even when you went to Guernsey, you're like, I really want to do this. That should be good enough reason, right? You really want to do it. But at the same time, your mind is like, oh, justification reason number 1, you can improve your English. It will look good on your CV, right? Like, it's so instant. Yeah.
Yeah, you need that logical side. Like that move was definitely emotional. Like the move was really, it was a strong emotional drive, but like you say, you justify it and logically. So with that, again, like emotionally, I was pulled toward doing this, that little voice inside. But then that logical side wasn't in agreement with that at all. It's like, no, look, come on. Why would you want to do that? But then eventually, you know, when the little voice doesn't shut up and it just becomes louder and louder. And then
Was there like a specific turning point where you're like, oh, I gotta trust my emotions on that now. I gotta trust the little voice now.
yeah, well, do you
Or was it
know,
just gradually building up?
I think it was gradual, but it came to a point. I remember one day, I had clients coming for an audit actually, and when it was like this, when they were coming on site, it was my job to kind of organize everything and just welcome them and be there, especially that they were French speaking, so it always helped that I was there to translate and speak their own language. And I remember, so I was just, when it was like that, I always tried to arrive a little bit earlier than normal and enough time to settle and prepare the room and all that sort of stuff. So I was trying to rush, but my daughter, who was maybe 3 at the time, had her own agenda, right? Like kids do.
Especially 3-year-olds.
Problems.
Like, I mean,
Yeah,
mine is now
exactly. Yeah,
turning 4 in a couple of months. So yeah, like 3-year-olds. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Free will
exactly.
is amazing. Awesome. Love it.
Yeah. So obviously she just decided she would not get ready, and then this turned into a proper tantrum, and then it was just steals, and then it just escalated, and I lost it. I just started shouting and screaming, and then she cried some more, and then I took her into the car and stuff, and I just as I was driving, and I was just like, what am I doing? Who is this person that I'm becoming? This is not the mother I imagined I would be. This is not the mother I want to be. This
Mm-hmm.
is not our fault. This is all my stress building up inside.
Mm-hmm.
This is all this pressure. And she's taking the brunt of it. You know,
Yeah.
she's only
And
a
kind of like
3 year old.
mirroring back to you.
Yeah, exactly. Like we just pick it up on this fight or flight, and then my my heart rate pattern all over the place, obviously, like as being like a heart coherence coach now, I know all these things, but back then I didn't. So she was obviously feeding on that and reflecting and being
Mm.
wind up even more in that fight or flight response because and I was projecting that. And so it was just the half hour that it took to drive out to nursery. I was just crying my eyes out, thinking, what is that? Who am I? And I got to work afterwards, and then my colleagues were looking over at me a few times during the day, thinking, "Are you all right?" Kind of mouthing, right? Because we could see, obviously, it just tears were welling
Yeah.
up again at a point when I was just recalling what happened in that morning, and then all that all time that day, I was elsewhere. I wasn't really in my job, and I was
Mm-hmm.
just thinking, something's got to give there. Something's got to change. I can't
Mm-hmm.
carry on like this. This
Mm-hmm.
has to change. And so I guess that was probably another turning point there. Like I said, there was this little voice for a while. It was building inside, but that what really pushed me to say, right,
Mm-hmm.
something needs to change. I'm getting pulled towards this. Let's try it. And then so that was 4 years ago. Now I've left this job and then started this. And initially I was teaching yoga. And then, it was just the point where I was exploring really, because people come to yoga for all sorts of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized that the people that were coming to me were very much like me. I think, you attract you tend
Yeah.
to
So
attract people
like-minded
that are
people.
like you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So and it was a lot about, managing their stress and their anxiety and giving themselves a break. A lot of them are mothers. So and then it just kind of really pushed me into that direction and tried to really we're really kind of pushing this thing where I need to support people with their stress and anxiety. And so
Mm-hmm.
I just looked into, meditation, and I discovered the work of Joe Dispenza because I remember
Mm-hmm.
again me trying to understand how things work. I was just like, what's happening when we do a gratitude practice?
Mm-hmm.
Why does it makes us feel so good? And so I started diving into this about serotonin and the oxytocin, and I came across a blog post from Dr. Joe Dispenza, who was talking
Mm-hmm.
about HeartMath and how they done a study that showed like after 18 minutes of heart coherence practice, you get this huge release also of antibodies, and I was just like, what is that? What is that HeartMath? I never heard of HeartMath before.
It's
So
insane when you
that's it. So it drove me there to their website, and I'm like, oh God, this is so up my street. This is science. This is this is linked to the heart, to meditation, to our practice, to our emotions. So I trained as an HeartMath coach, and then and now I guess that's what I do. I coach people. I do work in companies as well, because again, a lot of the work I do is in life science and healthcare companies, because they understand the message that I've got to say about, this is not just all woo-woo. This is why it works.
Yeah.
Science is there. And I love that. So, so I coach people one-to-one. I've got an online course that's just launched. And I go into companies and support their employees. I'll teach them how to get back to themselves, to rebalance themselves, to retune their nervous system so they can get back to the best version of themselves. Again, thinking back to me, it was about being the best I could be in my work and with my children. That was so important. I hated that person I had become. I wasn't the mum I wanted to be. So it was all about kind of stripping all that stuff back and just getting back to who I truly was.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, and I love that you said going back, right? Because I always feel there's this notion of we have to your best self. Like I like the term and I don't like the term at the same time, right? Like, because I feel it often has the notion of your best self is something in front of you that you have to go towards, right? Yeah. But I think it's not kind of like outside of you, in front of you, but it's inside of you for sure. And for most of us, who are now in like their like 30s, 40s, 50s, right? Or even in your 20s, I suppose, like your best self, your highest self, you were that at some point, right? And before, I don't know, before everyone told you how you should be and how you should behave, and this is good and this is not good in whatever social settings or in school or wherever. So it's kind of like the returning back to you, the returning home, where I'd rather so I really like that you said like going back, right? I think it's more that notion than like striving towards your best self as kind of like an ideal that you're never going to achieve anyway, that most people are kind of like substituting with like being perfect, which again, it is not what it's about. It's still very much you being a human with all the messiness that comes with it, right? But so I'm really glad you said like going back to, and so like how are we getting a start of things, right? Like we're stressed, like most of us listening now, we're stressed out. We're constantly overstressed anyway. Our nervous system is usually overstimulated as is anyway. We might deal with chronic illness, or we're parenting, or we're building businesses, and so we're online, we're on social media, we're getting bombarded with all these different things of how we should be and compare, and that's also stress, right? It's not just running around trying to get your kids to nursery. That's stress, but there are different levels of stress. So how do we start building our capacity or resilience to hold more, right? Because we cannot control, as you say, sometimes just things get thrown at you, and we can't really control what's getting thrown at us. But and this is very also in line with Joe Dispenza, like we can control how we react to those things.
Exactly.
So
I always think to my
how
clients, focus on controlling the controllables, we can never, and anything that's coming at us, we don't know. I mean, the only constant in life is change.
Yeah.
We hate it as human beings because we always need to see the next step. And then it's such a controversy really in the way we live now, the way we are built with our nervous system and our ego that wants to protect the things the way they are, because anything outside of that comfort zone is a threat, and our nervous system is always trying to keep us safe. And like you said, we're constantly bombarded all the time. Our nervous system was working really well. It was designed really well for humans 200,000 of years ago. But we've not had a system upgrade since then. Life has moved on so quickly. We've evolved so quickly as human beings, but the nervous system is still the same. And it's not our lives. It's not that the nervous system is not optimized for our lives now. It's just our lives are just completely misaligned with who we truly are and how we function as human beings. So we need to give ourselves a break. Like you say, we're constantly bombarded, and that drains us. That drains us. Being thrown into constant fight or flight or freeze is just this constant adrenaline, cortisol, depletes. There's no energy left. There's just no control over inflammation. We get chronic diseases. Our DNA gets damaged because cortisol attacks telomeres, so the little protective caps on your chromosomes. So when your DNA is damaged, your cell can no longer replicate. So we age, we get diseases. So we need to balance that, like I always talk about, your autonomous nervous system, which is completely subconscious, like it runs as an autopilot. You've got your autopilot, so you've got your accelerator and your brake, and we're constantly pressing onto the accelerator, but we never brake enough.
Oh,
but
yeah, I love this analogy. Yeah. We're always kind of like push.
Yeah.
And not even, and most of us not even consciously push the accelerator anymore. It's just full on pedal to the metal, like all the time.
Totally. And it's constant because, even when I say to people, oh, what do you do to relax? And be like, oh yeah, I'll watch TV. But what you're doing, you're constantly bombarding yourself again with more information. News come on, and then it's like, oh my God, what's happening? And then you're again just threatened by whatever news. You go on social media and then you feel inadequate because everything is so beautiful and rosy. And then we've got to think about the system as being so primitive that it was just there to defend ourselves. But everything that the nervous system is perceived as a threat to you and your survival and to the human race, really, is a threat. So, like, if we feel inadequate, if we don't feel beautiful enough, we're not going to find a mate to reproduce. We might not have the most beautiful house. It's not a good enough shelter. Maybe we don't, we're not able to go to all these fancy restaurants. We don't have enough food. It's all these things. And it gets perceived by nervous system as a threat. Or people will say, oh, just, I had such a stressful week. I can't wait to have a glass of wine or gin and tonic time Friday. Woo-woo. And what you're doing is, again, you're pressing onto the accelerator because alcohol does that. It just releases even more stress hormones. So we need to learn to give our nervous system a break and slow down and press onto the brake.
So back to like how can we start? So I'd say then a good thing to start would be to look at everything you're doing and ask yourself, is this renewing me or is this depleting me?
Yeah.
Well, and so now comes the tricky bit, right? The gin and tonic Friday nights. I mean, we all love those occasionally, right? Like, I mean, there's nothing inherently good or bad. It's whether you use it as, I think, whether you, for what reason you're doing the gin tonic night, right? Like, if you want to go celebrate with your girlfriends and have a gin tonic, fair enough, right? But if you use it to kind of like block out something else, might not be very healthy for you. But
absolutely.
But the thing is, and that's always tricky when you're in the midst of all that at the beginning. The gin and tonic in the moment might feel right, the thing that renews you, right? Or the cup of coffee in the morning. I mean, alcohol is maybe too extreme, but let's say the cup of coffee in the morning, right? You feel, you have the instant gratification of, oh, this is renewing me, but long term, it might be depleting you, right? Depending on where you're at. So how do we really navigate what is renewing me, what is filling my cup, and what is actually like draining my cup?
Yeah. And I think like it's all about balance, really, you know. And it gets to the point where it's knowing yourself as well, you know, going back to introvert, extrovert, for example. How do you do that? You know, as an introvert, you know, socializing with a large group of people would be draining. Like after an hour or two, you're like, oh, right, time out. I'm done. I'm done. I don't have any other energy. Whereas the extrovert needs that. They need, because they're not as sensitive to dopamine as introverts are. So socializing with large group of people is actually renewing for extroverts. So it's understanding you, knowing you. But when I work with my clients as well in my online course, I've got this exercise which I call the depleting funnel and the renewing pool. So it's really looking at, you know, the depleting funnel. What is there in your life that depletes you? And then I always say to them, you know, run that through like the RAB framework. I called it the RAB framework. So it's like remove, avoid, and boundaries. So what can you remove from that? You know, is it a case of, can you delegate something?
Can you just, if you know, getting groceries because being in the shop is really stressing you, maybe can your husband do it? Can you order in? What can you do?
Exactly. And then avoid would be, you know, can you avoid certain things? Don't doing that often, you know, like I'm thinking if you're neurodivergent, for example, and again, being in a big, you know, in a big crowd is really too much for you. You're too, you know, it's too much sensory input, you know, can you avoid going to these places or things like that? And then the B is for boundaries, you know, if it's something you can remove, you can avoid, can you put boundaries around that? Again, going back to the example of introvert, extrovert. If you're an introvert, it's okay to say, I've had enough, I need to refuel my cup now. You know, it's okay to excuse yourself from a party after 2 hours and say, I need to go home now. I need to renew myself and have some time alone. So can you put boundaries around that? And then the renewing pool is about seeing what in your life renews you, what really brings you love, joy, calm, and peace, and all that sort of stuff. And use that really as a pool of asset that you can pull from. Like, really, I need to renew myself. What can I take from that? And when we go through this exercise, I tell them to kind of run that through the MA framework. So multiply, amplify, and add. So multiplying, how can you do these things more often? Amplify, can you maybe like find a way to amplify those benefits? Can you even like bring two things together? I mean, I don't know if you love, you know, again, you're an extrovert and you need the company being in a large group of people, but you also love being in nature. I don't know, find a walking
outdoor boot camp, outdoor yoga class, whatever.
Exactly.
Or create
something
one
like that. Can you amplify that? And the last bit is adding to that as well. You know, what else can you add? Is this something that you've always thought, would love to do that, would love to try that? Oh, I used to love doing crafts or doing this when I was younger and I don't do that anymore. Can you bring that back into your life? Because these things are there to renew us. It makes us feel good. So so it's a way, I guess this exercise there really is a way, like you said, about protecting your capacity. Remove, avoid, put boundaries around it, protect that capacity. Don't get drained so much. And then it's refueling it. If you've taken away a wee bit of that capacity, refuel it with all these things that are just renewing you, that feel good in your life.
Yeah, I love both frameworks. I definitely see a lot of things where I'm like, oh yeah, I've been doing that, or yeah, or trying to build more, or avoid more,
Yeah.
um, and especially boundaries. I don't know. I don't know though. I see it. I mean, I work mostly with women or people who identify as women, and the boundaries are that's always in the conversation. That's
Yeah.
really really tough.
It's a really hard thing to do because,
Mm,
like you were talking about, there's so many layers, it's going back to the best version of ourselves is going back to who we truly are. But there's so
yeah.
many layers that have been added, cultural expectations. You're a mom, you need to do
Oh
this,
yeah,
you
and
need to
yeah,
do this,
exactly.
you
Like the role
need to
set
cook
of
fresh food for
definitions.
your kids, and then you need to do this, and then you need to do that. So, like we were talking about removing, l- delegating something to others. Sometimes it's so hard to do, because we're like, yeah, but
Mhm.
this is my role, this is my job. I should be doing this, like so
Yeah,
it's
right.
it's
It's
really
you're
hard.
getting. Yeah, that's the thing, right? So you have your how you. I mean, now I get now the sociology in me gets really happy because we're like, ooh, we have this is really important to understand. So let's talk about this briefly. You have inter like inter role conflicts and you have intra role conflicts. So meaning you see yourself as a mom and you have an image of how a mom should be that has been shaped by, I don't know. In my case, it was my image of a mom is I don't want to be like my mom, so that's how she shaped mine. But I mean,
No offense, mom.
that's yeah 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 like whatever. Yeah, that's a good conversation for
That's
another
another story.
episode. Yeah. Oh God, yes. But it's like so you have that right. So you create. So you have all these conflicts of like how I should be, how I see myself, and I'm not living up to that or whatever. And then when you're in what your all your other roles, right? Like, oh, how I also have like a business owner role, and I have a mom role, and I have a wife role, and how can I like multiply myself and
Yeah.
be excellent all the time everywhere? And like shortcut, like spoiler,
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
not possible.
No. It's like we're trying to bring, we've got all these different identities that we're trying to bring together. And sometimes I don't always do it with my clients. It just depends. When I take my clients from my program, I do have certain steps that take them through
Yeah.
this kind of framework. But there's always kind of, a couple of sessions where it's just going to be like, I'll just kind of guide them towards, what I think they need or what we need to work on. And so for some of them, we really work on their values because a lot of people
Oh yeah.
have an idea about, what's important to them. But if I was to say to them, give me your top 7 values, nobody can really give you that. You'll be like, and this is important, but in
What
understanding,
are your top 7
the
values?
priorities, right? I've got them here because I write them down so I
Oh,
can remember.
perfect.
So, so it's family, peacefulness, care, health, achievement, autonomy, and genuineness. These are my 7. And
Ooh, I like
and
this.
and why I wanted to well speak about this because you've mentioned that a lot of the stress that we have and anxiety comes from conflict with our core values. So
Mm.
if in everyday life you're doing a job that's constantly conflicting with some of these values, you're always going to feel stressed and anxious.
Yeah.
If we want to really live a life of fulfillment, happiness, we need to be aligned with those core values. If we do
Mm-hmm.
things that it's that internal conflict all the time, it's always going to cause that conflict, that stress, and that anxiety, that angst
Mm-hmm.
within within you. So this is why, again, we were talking about, and I love what you said, that it's not something, the best version of ourselves is not in front of us. It's within us, because that's what it is. See if you can strip back everything that's been added, all these layers, all these expectations and stuff, and you can align yourself with who you truly are, your core values that drive your thoughts, your behaviors. See if you can live your life in alignment with these.
Oh, I loved it. It's kind of like Marie Kondo, but for your life. Right?
Yeah. So it's just, it's stripping back, and you're back to, this is who I am. This is what's important to me. This is when I'm my best, when I'm in alignment with these things.
Yeah, right. And that's why a lot of us who think fondly of one, or like of moments in their childhood of where they're like, oh, I don't know, there were times where I was used to able to paint for hours at a time. So yeah, it's really like you're still able to, if you were able to do that at some point in your life. I mean, some don't bother ever. Like, I mean, my niece, she doesn't really care about painting. Like, she's 5 now. She's like, like she colors, but it's not like, right? And it's fine. But if you, as a child, if you were really into coloring, like you could, I mean, your parents will let you know if you were, then that's still in you.
Yeah.
Right? It might not be color. It might now be, I don't know, working with clay or whatever, but it's still in you, right? It's not something you kind of have worked towards to.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. No, exactly. And then again, like, this is when we do the exercise with depleting funnel and renewing pool with my clients, when we talk about the renewing pool afterwards, I talk to them about flow state. And what you've mentioned there, it really is that, because when you are a child, you're doing something that you totally get lost into it and you lose track of time and stuff. It's when you go into flow state. And if we reach that state, this is when we get release of anandamide, which is, and I love that they called that neurotransmitter that way, because ananda in Sanskrit, in the ancient yogic language that's used in yoga, it means bliss. So it makes us feel blissful.
Blissful.
Yes.
I like that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the level of nerd I like. Yes.
So we get anandamide, we get dopamine, which is obviously great to make us feel good, motivated, creative. All these connection happens within those neurons that are not usually.
They're all firing in a good way, right? Yes.
Yeah. And then you get serotonin and oxytocin in the other end of it. So just, again, feeling content, fulfilled, happy, all kind of lovey-dovey. And we don't get into that state enough. And most of us, what we are doing is, because we've got so many things going on, we're always distracted. We multitask. We keep ourselves in that first phase of that flow state, which is called the struggle phase. And in that phase, we get adrenaline and cortisol pumped up. So can you imagine if you spend a day where you're just in that phase all the time, you're just pumping those
cortisol hormones. I know what's going to happen. I'll be awake at 4 o'clock in the night.
And then you get to the end of the day and you're like, I'm shattered, I'm exhausted. And you've done loads, but you can't even feel like what you've really done, and you certainly don't feel fulfilled at the end of that day. Whereas if you've let yourself go into that state of flow, then that feeling on the other side of it.
Are there 2 states? Like the first is kind of like the really like the anticipation, adrenaline, cortisol, and then we move into into a flow state, or like walk us through the states.
So the flow state, there's like 4 phases to the flow state. When the first phase is that struggle phase, usually, if you're going into flow, you're letting it go. If you're able to ride it out, it usually lasts about 10 to 15 minutes.
That's not awfully long.
No, it's not. No, it's not long at all. But this is when we tend to get distracted. So you'll sit down to do something you have to do, and you'll pick up your phone. You look at something else, the notification. Oh, this is
so we just have to ride it out for like 15 minutes.
You've got to ride it out, stick in it, and it's uncomfortable. The way I often explain it as it's when you go for a run or you go and do some cardio at the gym, and then you're
Yeah.
looking at the time and you're like, what is that? Oh, like 8 minutes. I could stop now. I'm done. But once you pass that, and then
Yeah.
it becomes
Once
easier,
you
and
put
then the
on your
time,
trainers and once you're out the door, you're done, right? It's
yeah,
I think that basically the whole premise of Mel Robbins' book, The 3 Second Rule. If you're decided doing something, you just got to do it in like 3 seconds,
yeah,
and then you just
yeah,
it's
yeah.
done.
Otherwise, that's it. So that lasts about 10 to 15
Mm-hmm.
minutes.
Ooh.
Then we get into the release phase where you've got a release of nitric oxide, and nitric oxide helps flushing out the stress hormones. So it flushes it out.
Ooh.
I'm
Yeah.
flying here. Um, we can release nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is released in our brain when we meditate. It's also released by our sinuses. So if we were to do, for example, like a bee breath practice, so
Or
Brahmari
if we tap.
Pranayama. Yeah, if we tap, that's just,
Mm.
and breathing in and out through the nose is really
Mm-hmm.
important and not through the mouth to do that. So it helps release nitric oxide as well. So that
Mm.
flushes out your stress hormones. And then we get into that flow state. And so flow state generally, this whole cycle lasts about 90 minutes for most adults. Some people can go longer. I know I can. I can be in flow state for a lot longer because I'm an introvert and I'm not so sensitive to dopamine. So I can keep going a little bit
Mm.
longer. Extrovert tends to be a bit shorter. So we get that anandamide, the dopamine release in that flow state. And then once we've exhausted that, we get into what's called the recovery phase, which is when we get the serotonin and the oxytocin, and we're like, this feels good.
Yeah, which just
I'm
makes us kind of
happy.
like
Happy.
drowsy
Yeah,
and
that's it.
sleepy, like in a good way, right? Like the way you feel tired after like a good day's work or something. Like you're like, ah,
Yeah,
relax,
that's
slow
it.
down.
That's
Yeah,
exactly it. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Okay. Oh, I get it.
Mm.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Let's. I mean, sorry. That's like I don't know, mental bracket open. Like I was just kind of stunned when you said like, oh, the first phase kind of like 8 to 10 minutes, and I'm like, oh, that's like now logically, yeah, that's not too long. We should be able to get a handle on that, right? But I mean, when you're in the moment, right, those fucking 10 minutes feel like fucking forever.
Yeah, they
Um,
do.
and and that's the whole thing of like the whole concept. If you're into manifestation or and all those sorts, or Joe Dispenza, I feel it's also connected very much to the concept of time and the term of time bending, right? Like how time is not something straight, right? If you're in the first phase, time will feel like forever, like it's dragging on, and then you're in your flow space. It's like
Yeah,
time's gone,
that's
right?
it.
Um, so there's a mental bracket closed.
Mm.
Um, so I think that's really interesting. Yeah, good to know those four phases for like to really be mindful of, oh, okay, where am I now? And I feel I agree. Loads of us are in phase one, oh, way too much. But then we there are a lot of us who are doing the work, some of the work, and then we get into phase two because we know we have to like decompress, de-stress, whatever. So I feel more like I know how personally, I know how I can get. It doesn't work always. It doesn't work so well every day, but I know how I can get myself from phase one to phase two. So what is the crucial? Like, is there something crucial how to move from phase two to phase three that most people like aren't like aware of? What would you say?
Like from the release to the flow state.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, no,
Like, I mean,
there's
you
no,
you know, like you have a stressful day. Like, I
yeah,
mean, just talking from my experience, right? I mean, I have a stressful day. Then I know at the end I'll feel much better if I do. For me, yoga is very much a thing in the morning for me. It's not an evening thing for me. I would do like a guided hypnosis, for example, in the evening.
mm.
That's like my jam. So I do that, and then I feel more relaxed, but not necessarily in a flow state. Well, obviously, of course, I mean, it's 9 o'clock in the evening, so I'm not gonna
Yeah.
paint now, but
Mm-mm.
maybe I would. I don't know. But is there something, or is just, again, this is me. I need to know the next step to get into that flow space. Oh, we're so
yeah,
bad.
so flow state is, it's a little bit different from what you're describing. So, I mean,
Oh.
flow state generally, you can only have one or two during the day. Like otherwise,
Oh, okay. So they're really
it's
peak.
yeah,
Okay.
otherwise it's a lot. And it's really about, being able to focus. And also with flow state, in order to get into flow state, it has to be something that is challenging you. And the science around it is saying like it needs to be something that's maybe roughly about 4% above your current skill set. So to give you an example, see if you were to go and play football with a bunch of 5-year-olds, that's going to be super easy for you, right? You're going to get bored. You're not going to be able to reach
Yeah,
flow.
it's not activating.
Boredom's going to set in. If you were to play football with the French football team, it'll be way too hard. You'll never gonna
it'll
get
be
there
easy.
either.
I mean, with the Scottish team, I could not keep up with it. No, the French are good. No. But yeah. I mean,
so
that's
it'll be
too
too
high.
much.
But
You'll want to give up. It's just you won't get into flow. But if you and I were playing football, I mean, I don't know what your level of football is, but I'm not too good at all.
I don't know. I haven't really played football. Like, do you mean soccer? Like that football?
Yes.
Because it's always
that football. Yeah.
Oh, then I'm not too bad. And now I was thinking more of like rugby, and I was like, I have a hard time catching balls, but I'm good with kicking balls.
You're good with kicking balls, right? So, but like, let's say we're amateurs, right? So we're roughly about the same level. We would be able to get.
It's a good healthy competition, so you're not turned off.
Yeah.
But activated and activated enough.
Yeah.
Okay, get
it.
So
that's how we can get into flow. So like sitting down and doing a very important task that you have to do in your business and stuff. It's just all about not being distracted and really ride out that first phase. But what you were talking about at the end of your day, this is more about going into that break side of the nervous system now. It's rebalancing.
Okay.
If you've had a stressful day and you accelerator, is break. So you can use yoga to do that, but it could be just very simple, like it's all about activating that side of the nervous system. So if you were to use yoga, for example, it can just be one pose or two poses. What works well in this case is inversion. So doing a down dog, child's pose, or even just lying on your bed and putting your legs up the wall, just anything that's going to bring blood to
back
your
to the head.
It's going to trigger your baroreceptor. So we've got receptors in the throat that's monitoring the blood pressure all the time, just to make sure there's not too much pressure
in the head.
Or
not enough, not too much, not too late.
Exactly. So when the rise of blood pressure to the head is detected, it triggers the brake response, because the nervous system, there's those two sides, but it affects your entire body in your mind. It's just, so it's going to open up your arteries to drop your blood pressure. So you're going to start to feel relaxed. And so that's the way you could do it. Other easiest way is through the breath, because the breath is such
breath work.
Yeah, it's just, it's got an incredible position in the nervous system, because it is both part of your autonomous nervous system, so that autopilot that you don't control. Right now you're breathing, you don't have to think about it. But it's also part of what we call the somatic nervous system, the one we control. So you can choose to change your pattern, to hold your breath. So with that, we're able to affect directly our autopilot through the breath. So any breath work, anything that's going to extend that exhale, because when we breathe out, this is when the brake comes on. With every break we take, every breath that we take, accelerator
every
and brake.
Breath I take. Sorry, I had to. I mean, you served it on a silver platter. Like, I mean.
So with every breath, we activate the accelerator and the brake. When we inhale, it's the accelerator. When we exhale, it's the brake. So if you think about how much time you spent into that accelerator mode, try to break as much as you can. So long exhale, again, deep breaths. Rectangle breathing, which is the one that a lot of my clients love, just kind of following the shape of a rectangle as you breathe in the short side, breathe out the long side, and then
that was actually something I only learned fairly recently. I think last year I was watching a master class. You know, you can do like the master classes with the celebrities.
Okay, yeah.
And there's masterclass.com or something. I don't know. Anyway, there was this one lady. She was former military, and she's doing like survival skills in the wild.
Right.
You know, like what you do when you're like out lost in the woods. And I'm like, that's always, I don't know, always good to know, right? And she said, well, that's the thing to do. And then she also talked about the breath, you know, like how you can calm yourself down in stressful situations.
Yep.
And that's the first time that goes into the rectangular shape thingy, where I had it explained like this, that you need to breathe out longer than you breathe in to calm your body. I'm like, why isn't that taught in like kindergarten?
I know. Yeah, these things are so simple. That's what I always say. Doctors tell us to do that when.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Did I really have to become like 36 years age for the first time, you know, have it really not implied or blah, 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 but really explained and said out loud, you have to breathe out twice as long as you breathe in to calm down. I'm like, so I really like the rectangular shape, right? Because you have one side that's shorter and one side you're longer. So you're naturally doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh. Okay.
And this is such a great tool as well, because if you are like in the moment and you're really stressed out about something, just to focus on the shape, it really allows your mind to focus on something else also, that whatever is bothering you as well.
Which
so
is always good to keep the mind busy with following the rectangular shape and not like some kind of bullshit story you're telling yourself about why this is now making you a bad mom or a bad person or a bad whatever. Yeah. Oh, I really like this. So, hey, like, I have one more thing I want to explore.
Yeah.
With you, and that's goes back to the very first thing we've kind of talked about, like the need to know the next step, right? And I think it just ties in so beautifully, right? What I've said, right? I mean, I wanted to know what is the next phase? How can I get the next phase? Like, oh, shut up, right? And like the whole justification of and then again, I think it ties very beautifully into The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, right? I mean, one of the key themes, if you don't know the book, so it's kind of like a tale that shares Santiago's personal experience, and he has visions and he follows the visions, and it kind of like leads him back to a treasure. I'm not going to spoiler now, but he follows the vision to find his treasure, right? So basically, I feel one of the 4 key themes in that book. One is like following your dreams, taking risks, learning from failure, and then like trusting the journey, right? And I think that ties really beautifully in with how our need to know the next step. How can we kind of like release that and start trusting the journey, right? The journey we're on as a human, the journey we're on in a business, and it's very much scenic route theme here. How can we start releasing the need to know for the next step, and how can we start trusting our journey?
Yeah, it's just kind of like the book is just trusting that next step, and just taking that next step, and just the rest will follow. Like, you know, human beings, and that's the whole, you know, paradox of the thing is the only constant in life is change. It changes all the time. Every day is different. Seasons change. We've got to reinvent ourselves all the time, creating this new identity all the time. Like we are the sum of our habits, but our habits change all the time. Throughout the year, our habits change all the time. Now we're going into spring.
Yeah, we're
Lights are getting,
outside more. It's just
yeah,
natural. You
yeah. Well,
might
just
eat more salads in the summer, more soup in the
that's
winter.
it.
Like
Yeah,
yeah,
habits change, create new identity. So we're constantly changing. And nothing is certain anyway. I mean, the only thing that's certain in life is death.
yeah,
That's the only thing we know
yeah.
that's gonna happen for sure. So, once you think about that, again, it's about controlling the controllables. What
Mm-hmm.
is it that you can control? You
Mm-hmm.
don't know what's gonna come. You don't know that the change is there. Change is a constant. So there's no point spending energy in trying to guess. We can do our best guess, and that's and that's where the whole controversy is, because the brain is doing that. The brain is constantly
Yeah,
predicting
yeah.
stuff
What
to
if?
keep
What
you
if? What if? What if? Then I
exactly
am prepared for this emergency, that
yeah
crisis,
to keep
that
you alive, right? It's just like this
and that's
thing.
good, right? I mean, it's there's
We need
a
that.
few many times where this helps you to act faster in an actual crisis or in an emergency, but we have the tendency to to do it regardless all the time.
Yeah, it's a
Like
negative bias, and like you say, we need it because if we thought everything's going to be happy and positive at the end, we'll take too many risks and we'll probably be dead by now. And now probably won't be
yeah,
enjoyed.
exactly. Like if you're too
So
blue-eyed or
yeah.
like, oh, carefree, uh and I feel that has been also something that has been taught us, right? Like you have to be smart, street savvy, you have to be prepared, you have to be right? So you're not getting put under the bus or whatever. So this is very much also in line with, I think, a lot of the things we heard growing up.
hmm Yeah, no, absolutely. And we have got to listen to that to an extent, but this is where we can ask ourselves the question, is
Mm,
it really serving me right now? Is it
yes.
really an anxiety thing where your brain is like, what if, what if, what if, what if, oh
Yeah.
my goodness, is it really gonna happen? Is this feeling that I'm having now, those thoughts, are they really serving me right now? Or is it just, again, just a made up thing? It's just, and again, it's going back to calming ourselves down. So we're
Mm-hmm.
not in that fight or flight state. So we're not driven
So
by the
we're
primitive
actually
and the
able
emotional brain.
to to feel the present, right? The present, right? When you're in a state of shock, trauma, or flight, like you're not. Yes, you're very much present, but it's not. You're not. You're not present,
It's the
right?
primitive you, the primitive
Yeah,
you that's
exactly.
present.
Yeah. Thank you. So you kind of need to relax, calm down, whatever, to be in to where you come back to a state of being present, to so you can be aware of all those things.
hmm Yeah, no, exactly. And again, it's about applying the brakes so you can come
Mm,
back down from that fight or
mm,
flight and
mm.
be back and having that harmony again into your three brains, like
Yeah.
the primitive, the emotional, and your rational brain. And also connecting to the heart. It's an exercise I do sometimes with my clients, and it's great to do whatever you're at, like if it's for your personal life or it's for your business, or if you're a people manager or leader and leading an organization, it's the mind map, heart map thing. So you know how we all know how to do mind map, right? You've got something to do, or you draw out what needs
Yeah.
to happen, blah blah blah. And usually it can become really big. But when we can calm ourselves down, when we can connect to our heart, practice heart coherence, make sure our nervous system is in that perfect balance, and we can really get into that coherent state through the heart that kind of brings coherence in all of the systems of the body and the mind. And then we do that exercise where we're just doing that again, but from the place of calm and peace in
Oh,
the
so
heart.
that's we're doing the heart map.
Yeah, it becomes
Oh.
completely different. And it's
Mm.
so, usually you look at it, you're like, this is so much more simple. It's just
Yeah, so
so
you're realizing that
simplified.
doesn't really matter at all.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, it's like Marie Kondo, but for your life. Oh, I love this. Thank you so much for sharing this exercise. And also like the sorry, the other exercises with us, depleting funnel and the pool. I really love those. I'm so glad we got to talk about it and share it with everyone who's listening. So I have tell me, where can people find you online, where you hang out? So people can read more about you and learn more about you.
So on socials, Facebook and Instagram, at Clan Wellness. I'm not so much on Facebook. I'm more on Instagram, but I'm very, very active also on LinkedIn. So people can find me there at Virginie Ferguson. And website, I've got 2 websites, but if you go to clanwellness.com, and if you were to look at just the coaching, for example, it would lead you to my other website, which is Resilience for Modern Life. So clanwellness.com or resilienceformodernlife.com. That's where you'll find me.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We'll, of course, link it also in the show notes. So I have always one last questions for my guests. I'm not sure if we already have answered this question, so let me know. And the question is, what book are you currently reading?
Oh, I've just started one last night called Dopamine Nation.
Dopamine Nation. Ooh,
yeah.
That sounds intriguing.
Dr. Anna Lemke, I think her name is.
Yeah, we're also going to link it in the Scenic Roots library.
Yeah.
Dopamine Nation. It's also gonna put that on my to read pile. Virginie, merci beaucoup. Thank you so much for being on the Scenic Root podcast with me. It was a great joy. Talk soon.
Yeah, speak soon.
And just like that, we've reached the end of another journey together on the Scenic Root podcast. Thank you for spending time with us. Curious for more stories or in search of the resources mentioned in today's episode? Visit us at scenicrootpodcast.com for everything you need. And if you're ready to embrace your scenic route, I've got something special for you. Step off the beaten path with my Scenic Route affirmation card deck. It's crafted for those moments when you're seeking courage, yearning to trust your inner voice, and eager to carve out a path authentically, unmistakably yours. Pick your Scenic Route affirmation today and let it support you. Excited about where your journey might lead? I certainly am. Remember, the Scenic Route is not just about the destination, but the experiences, learnings, and joy we discover along the way. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to seeing you on the Scenic Route again.